Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Stevenson. I'm the Executive Director of the German Film Office, a new initiative of the Goethe Institute and German Films based in New York. Thanks for joining this Q&A about the film Economia with Director Carmen Losmann and Professor Raphael Chap. Economia is part of the film program Kino Germany Now, which the German Film Office just launched in January and will be offering to theaters across the US through July. We're very pleased that Economia will have its US virtual premiere at Anthology Film Archives in New York, with screenings in other locations to follow. Before we move on to the Q&A, I would like to say a few words about our guests. Carmen Losmann studied marketing and later film at the Academy of Media Arts Cologne. Economia is her second feature-length film. Her first film, Work Hard, Play Hard, from 2011, deals with the effects of modern human resource management and received multiple awards, including the prestigious Grimme Prize in 2014. Raphael Chap is Assistant Professor of Economics at Drew University in New Jersey. She is also an economic advisor for the Pre-Distribution Initiative, a multi-stakeholder project to develop new investment structures that share more economics with workers and communities. Raphael also helped co-found the SMBX, a fintech marketplace for small business bonds. In a prior life, she worked as a tax attorney on Wall Street, including at Goldman Sachs. Raphael received her PhD in economics from the New School for Social Research and an LLM from New York University. Thanks for being here, Carmen and Raphael. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here. I watched this amazing documentary last week, and I watched it again. It's really fantastic. So such a pleasure to be here. Well, Carmen, you begin this documentary by outlining three trends: the increase in economic growth, the wealth concentration, and the increase in debt. And you start asking, if there's a connection between these trends, and that struck me as a really great starting point. So you started this investigation around the theme of money, and that maybe is a bit unusual place, I suppose, to start. Money is something that is pretty straightforward for people to relate to, right? The average person on the street knows what money is. But it's actually quite mysterious, and it's a bit more complicated than we think. So it's a topic that's kind of poorly understood. In Economia, you have the former chief economist from Deutsche Bank who says to you, I never really thought about this. It didn't really come up. I wasn't really taught about this. And then the financial crisis in 2008 happened and things started to not make any sense. And I had to revisit this topic and start from scratch. This is not verbatim, but that's pretty much what he was saying. So you start with money, and then in the second half of the documentary, you start to look at a number of paradoxes and kind of circular relationships, codependent relationships. So you try to understand where the money comes from to generate the profits. Do you need profits for money or money for profits, or both at the same time? You get these circular relationships where the money supply grows when the economy grows, but the economy needs the money supply to grow in order to grow. So my first question for you is, when did you realize the logical structure for this documentary? To me, to my mind, the structure works really, really well. You begin with this kind of a hook, money, how does it work? And then you continue with these big topics: growth, debt, inequality. But these are pretty complicated. They're hard topics. Did you spend a lot of time in advance for this documentary, researching all of this and figuring out how you're going to explain this? Or did you know that you wanted to begin the story with the mechanics of money, for instance? Or is this something that you uncovered as you were filming? You realized there's a structure to this story, and things fell into place from there. I'm curious about your process.
Yeah. Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. And the question is a bit difficult to answer. First of all, I did a lot of researching. I spent a lot of time researching these projects altogether several years. And in the beginning, I outlined a sort of script. We call it treatment in German. And according to this script to this outline roadmap, I implemented the starting point with the money creation. And so this starting point for the documentary was quite clear right from the beginning, and mainly because I followed a statement of an economist called Joseph Schumpeter. Joseph Schumpeter, he said that you have to go to the headquarters of capitalism, which is the credit system or the production sides of money, to understand its dynamism. And so, well, that's what I did. I knew before the filming or the shooting process of the documentary took place that I want to follow this capitalistic dynamics. In regard, as you mentioned, in regard to growth, debt, and inequality. The problem was rather that some episodes I outlined in the roadmap or in the script, they didn't work, mainly because of, well, problems getting shooting permissions and so on. And so I tried to find other episodes or situations and interview partners instead that could possibly answer or tell me something on this dynamic developments and interrelations. So this was I try to answer your question. It was not clear. Everything wasn't outlined right from the beginning. It was a developing process, and during the filming process, I had to research on and on and on. Yeah. Oh.
So many times in the documentary, the people that you interview get confused or flustered when you ask them these questions about money. There's an interesting moment with the chief economist at the European Central Bank, and he starts to explain, that what we're doing is printing money, but it's just a metaphor. No, but we're really printing it. Are we printing it? Are we lending it? And you start to have this conversation with someone on the side, and they kind of have this back and forth between the two of them. And it's really fascinating because, these are the people that you would think would know exactly what it is that, the European Central Bank is doing. And yet there is still this confusion, this conceptual confusion around this theme of money. So, they're genuinely at a loss for the most part. They realize this is more complicated to explain than I thought at first glance. There are different reactions in the documentary. Some people may be a little bit more aggressive. There's you recount a conversation where someone actually said to you, people like you, or something kind of aggressive, and then your question is like asking why a rock falls downward and not upward or something like this. It's just, even the question makes no sense to them. So my question for you was, as you were filming the documentary, did you gradually come to realize I'm onto something with this topic, because these reactions are very puzzling and interesting. There's really something significant happening here with, so many experts not necessarily understanding money at a very deep level. Were you expecting this, or was this part of your intent to document these difficulties, or it's just something that happened?
It wasn't my intention at all. The most of the time I was rather frustrated after interviews and during the film process at all. And just in regard to the chief economist of the European Central Bank, I think he was just trying to put this in right and clear and simple words for the audience, he does know quite exactly what they are doing, but he tries to find simple words, and then it comes. The situation is, as you mentioned, quite funny in a way. But he just tries to find simple words, just to put this in between. But basically, I was rather frustrated with the interviews, and because initially I thought I come closer to a core point, that I thought that my interview partners, which were mainly chief economists, investment managers, and other economic experts, they will help me to understand the capitalistic engine room and thus its dynamics. But I realized from interview to interview that many didn't even understand my questions, never mind to answer them. So, well, instead I found a very specialized and fragmented knowledge. Some people stuck into some ideological framework, and at least the answer, well, what I can say is that at least the answers couldn't help me to get closer to some kind of overview I was heading to, and then sort of meta structure I want to recognize within the documentary. And well, only during the last final editing process, I realized that these answers amount to something else, a sort of structure of non-answering, if you want to put it like this. And in the end, I decided to put that in a documentary as a sort of result as well, as a sort of, that is the meta answer that is so complicated to answer my simple questions in a way, or that the fragmented knowledge leads to something that people can't go back one step to see the interconnections and maybe the ecological consequences out of this fragmented knowledge,
Yeah, well, the resistance to the questions is something you allude to. Sometimes we see it, but you refer to people canceling interviews or putting restrictions, right? And I guess you already answered my question, but I was going to ask you exactly, as you encountered this, did you strategize what you were going to do with this? Because I think you putting the resistance in the documentary makes the documentary stronger, in my opinion. And there are some scenes that are even more powerful because you're filming these beautiful images, glass and steel. There's this part in the Siemens conference where you follow, right? And it's stunning footage. And then we just kind of hear we see the speaker, and at the end we hear that he declined to speak to you. So it's kind of a powerful moment. But did you have moments where you felt worried, or that this was going to be a challenge as a filmmaker? This could make the documentary stronger, but it can also be a real issue. How did you deal with this?
Well, basically, I was worried about how can I compose a full-length documentary out of so many non-answers and non-permissions and so on. So that was my basic worry, and I rather made a virtue out of a necessity. The layer with this people canceling interviews or putting restrictions and so forth. This layer mainly functions as a narrative tool to bring the production circumstances into focus, and I couldn't shoot some statements and explanations in front of the camera, but I got a lot during my research process, and then I decided during the editing process, out of this necessity I have to do a documentary out of this, and so I decided to put a kind of research layer into the film where my telephone calls are reenacted. And the audience can hear myself. Hi, this is Carmen Losmann. I'm trying to do a documentary, blah, blah, blah. And, but it's not clear to whom I talk to. And well, yeah, I was worrying a bit. Do people accept that they are not knowing to whom I'm talking to? But well, yeah, it's like it is. I couldn't find a clearer structure, and I decided to make it as clear as possible regarding the topics and well, the understandings, and then I decided to put it into the structure you just described, or I described traditionally. Yeah. Well, yeah, my main worry was that the documentary falls apart, and so I try to keep all these layers together to bring one consistent or more or less consistent red line into the documentary. Well, yeah.
So you explain how money is created, right? So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. This fascinating point about how the majority of the money supply is created when banks make loans. So is created through credit. And this is actually a pretty technical point. I think you really do a superb job at walking us through this, because I have tried teaching this to my students and we always run into conceptual difficulties, because I think ingrained in us, we have this idea that in order for me to lend something, I need to have it first, right? So if I'm a bank and I make a loan, I first need to have the cash. But that's actually not how it works. You don't.
It's the other way around. Huh?
Yes. And that's quite fascinating in and of itself. So the money is created through the accounting alone, and you have both sides of the balance sheet. You have the credit, and at the same time the receivable gets created, and it's well, this is why banks are so special. What I thought was really interesting is that you actually show us the bank employee going through the process, interviewing the person, and then going through the software, doing the entries. And it struck me as really boring, or at least very gray. The software looks like it's from the 80s, and it just looks a little bit like you're in someone's basement, and it's just kind of like very bureaucratic, but kind of dull and mundane in a way. And then you also go to the European Central Bank, which is actually responsible for creating a small percentage of the money supply. So this is different type of money, right? Directly created by the central bank. And the process here is quite different. First of all, it's very beautiful. You are entering this fortress. It's quite intimidating. You arrive at the conference room where monetary policy gets implemented. It's beautiful and very sleek. It's really the opposite of the bank employee. And it seems like the bank employee is really willing to speak to you. Like, yeah, I want to show you what I do. And it seems that it was harder to get to the central bank. So what do you make of this? Do you agree with me? Do you see this difference in culture? And there's definitely a different energy out of each institution. I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I agree with you and I don't agree with you. First of all, the point where I don't agree with you, I don't agree with you when it comes to the normal commercial bank is more accessible and not that they just want to explain and it was very, very difficult to find a bank. Well, we should in the end in a bank in Basel, which is in Switzerland. And we did this because we couldn't find one single bank well, I didn't phone everyone, but we tried to find a bank, just a normal bank in Germany, where willing us to show how money is created, just actually in their banking system. But we didn't. So we found in the end the Gemeinschaftsbank in Basel, where the general manager of the bank already published the process of creating money in their customers' magazine. So we knew, okay, they are willing to show and they are able to explain in front of the camera, and that's what we did. But it was really an exception, or in my point of view, I didn't find another bank in Germany. So they are not like that, okay, we show you, we are willing come on, well, we have our 80s software, that's it. No, so in this point, I don't agree with you, but where I definitely agree with you is the difference, the different energies and visual impacts of the institutions, what they are sending out, and well, yeah, I just can realize it's the architecture of power of the European Central Bank, in which we people should believe in, and versus the software architecture in a way of an accounting system which isn't made to impress anyone, you know. That are the different visual impacts, and I just can realize as the filmmaker, yes, that's it. It's like this. The rest is up to the audience to draw the understanding out of this. What does it mean, you know? Well, yeah, but the European Central Bank definitely wants to impress us on another level than the architecture, software architecture of the normal banking, accounting, whatever system, which no one should normally see.
Well, this is really good background information, knowing that it was actually hard to find a bank, and that I had noticed that it was in Switzerland, because in the beginning it's in francs, and I thought, what? Because, but yeah, that's quite fascinating. You really must be commended for like being able to get these interviews, because it really sounds like it was hard work to really get to speak to people. So once, you know, the money gets created through credit, for me as an economist, what's really fascinating is, depending on which side of the balance sheet you look at, money looks more like debt, or it looks more like money. You know, like the difference between money and credit, there's no difference. It's just which side of the balance sheet are you looking at. But then, you know, money circulates, right? So this debt is created, the money is put into motion as people borrow money to fund projects, right? And then it circulates. So you have this monopoly game at the beginning of the documentary, and then you keep coming back to that game later and later in the documentary. It's kind of like a unifying thread in a way. And you see people playing Monopoly, but instead of having the bank, you know, that gives you all the bills, pre-existing bank, you know, you don't really know where it comes from. You explain that the idea here is the money gets created when you build the house, and then it circulates. That was just, to me, such a great idea to really illustrate the point. How did you get the idea for this game, and how did you find people, you know, to play the game, and explain how that came about?
Yeah, well, this layer of the Monopoly game came into the documentary out of necessity. As I said before, during the filming process and after some interviews, I realized, okay, I realized that I have to be more precise, more I have to put more explanations into the documentary, and I was asking myself, how can I do this without having another talking head expert kind of thing. And well, I came across my research assistant. She came across Samira Kenavi, which is a person who did a lot of economic research, and she developed a monopoly game which reflects the real conditions of our economy into, well, some transformed monopoly game. And I joined one evening when Samira Kenavi, the protagonist and the developer of this game, she played the game with a working group at Frankfurt. Just they played it to give me a sort of glimpse what is going on, and while they were playing, I realized, okay, this is quite interesting, because this happening, this social happening, together with this discussions on economic topics, it was something different to another talking head kind of explanation. And then I was thinking, how can we sort of shoot this in a visual, exciting manner? And then we decided to, well, we deliberately choose a site on the ground, on public space, and within the architecture of a shopping mile or shopping zone, where we put a table and a few chairs, and then the playing round took place. So that's how I developed this kind of idea. I hope it's getting clearer now.
So that was a shopping, the background, you were in some plaza. Yeah.
It's a shopping mile in Frankfurt, German town, German financial city. Yeah.
I really enjoyed listening to their conversations, explaining each other and discussing. That was really, really great. So you identify this really interesting question, right? So money comes from credit. Okay. Obviously, credit only happens if there's this expectation of profit. That's the idea, right? Like, no one's going to give you a loan if they don't expect you to pay it back with interest. So profit is the engine of capitalist economy. But the question that you try to answer is, where does the profit come from? Because where does the money for the profit come from? Because you need more than the credit, right? That's the idea. How does that get created? This is, I think, the question that people don't understand necessarily when you ask that question, right? Where does the profit come from? A couple of instances, person looking at you, they're not in bad faith. They're seriously not really understanding, or sometimes they give you an answer and it's not really the right answer, right? Like, oh, it's because of innovation. That's not quite what you're asking. Yeah.
Exactly. They haven't asked themselves the question in depth, in my point of view. But anyway, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no. So that to me was really fascinating. And what's also great is that you do kind of come up with some kind of an answer, because at the end of the documentary, there's a moment where you ask whether today's profits are funded with tomorrow's debt, right? And I think the person sits back and thinks about it and says, yeah. And so, we're creating essentially new credit to settle the old credit, so to speak. And so then I was thinking to myself, the economy seems to be this kind of giant Ponzi scheme, really, because you need the future credit creation to settle back the old credit. So it's very much forward facing. And, a Ponzi scheme is whenever you use the investors' new funds to pay off the old investors. And a Ponzi scheme, everybody knows, at some point has to collapse because you can't really go on forever with this logic. So the economy appears to be this Ponzi scheme held together by a belief system. And, what's the problem with that? My response to your documentary would be, the system is not very stable. There's this issue of instability because if the new credit doesn't get created in time, for whatever reason, the old debts are in trouble, in jeopardy. And this kind of really makes the head spin. I think anybody who watches your documentary with great attention to details and really thinks about it will find themselves almost facing a precipice in a way. It's kind of scary. How did people react to your documentary thus far? How do they react to these ideas? Do you get the sense that people react in the same way that I did?
Yes, some people do, but generally speaking, I can't answer your question properly, because what would it help, if I gave you some kind of overview of people's reactions? what I experienced so far. I mean, it's a mixture. Yeah, you know, some people have the same reactions you do. Some people have others, and blah blah blah. But I can't give you an overview of all of this. What I can say is, what is the most important thing for me as a filmmaker, that you as the audience just decide for yourself. Yeah, what made the documentary with me? How do you react on this? Or has the film anything to do with your life or my life or whatever? Yeah, is there anything you should explore or research on any further? Just regardless what the others are has experienced with the documentary, or you know what I mean. I mean, I don't want to wipe your question away, but I just want to ask you in a way back, what helps you to know what others, how the others react.
Yeah, I was just curious if there are people who came to you and said, oh my God, you know, this documentary really got me thinking about this and blew my mind, you know.
Yeah, that happened. That happened. And therefore we also have a website, a homepage, OECONOMIA / or how to say it, it's -film.de. It's in German, unfortunately, but there people can click on this website and have, and I just present their further research possibilities, just to give a few ideas. But what I really want people to do after watching such a documentary is like ask myself, what do I know about economy? How do economy and money influence, what is influencing my life? I mean, economy and money definitely do influence my life. And what do I know about it? Yeah. What should I explore furthermore? And these are the things I want to trigger a bit as a documentary filmmaker. So,
well, at the end, you show, you know, research alternatives.
Exactly.
You type that on the computer. So I'm guessing you want people to do that. Maybe think about like, what we be doing differently. Yeah.
Exactly.
Is this a topic you're plan on continuing to work on?
I think about it. Yeah. I work a bit on it, and it's not clear so far, but maybe I will do a new documentary on research or on research alternatives. Sorry to put it like this. Yeah.
Terrific. Okay, I think that that I can't wait to see it. So I will be the first one. This was fascinating documentary. I loved it. I think I asked you all the questions that I could think about. I really hope this documentary gets the traction it deserves. These are serious topics and you do a fabulous job with them. So thank you. And it was lovely to speak with you, Carmen.
Thank you too. See you.
See you.